desk here and thought I would try my hand at a little commentary on this Gerbert Johnson video that I saw just this morning. I thought it was pretty interesting, and I thought it would be a productive jumping off point for me to discuss a whole bunch of things in my usual manically digressive style. So here goes.
I'm on a mission with the precision of a circumcision. Wait, look. Wish I was gay, cause I cannot talk to women. Wish I was black, cause I'd eat a lot of chicken. The CIA, they sell crack to little children. Epstein, he tried to crack some little children. Wait, dang. I'm doing scams, but I'm not Indian. Still remember seeing the Twin Towers in the distance. Now when I walk around the street, it just feels different. Wait, but the towers fell down. Gerby.
He always starts off these videos
Ladies
with a little
and
freestyle.
Gentiles, welcome back. White Morpheus here. If there's one thing I absolutely refuse to do, it's to live in a state of chronically elevated cortisol, constant stress. But this is the way a lot of people live now. You know,
And this is nothing new. Thoreau said the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation. And frankly, I feel like things have only gotten worse since his
kind
time.
of depressed, that's one thing. You feel like you can't do anything, you're just a little bit miserable. But that's kind of chill, honestly. And there really is something to be said about the occasional melancholy in your life. A lot of great art comes from emotional states like that. That's chill.
You know, I dated a cellist in college, and she talked about this one guy. I think it was a Russian composer who, like, married the love of his life and was so happy with her that he couldn't write great music anymore, and so he felt like he actually had to blow up his marriage and wreck his life in order to access the depth of feeling that would let him compose the kind of music that he felt like he was capable of. It actually, so it makes me think of the movie Amadeus and the sort of different attitudes that you see toward music and creativity in the characters of Mozart and Salieri. I didn't think I was going to talk about this at all. This is great because I feel like Salieri's whole attitude towards his creative processes, he's like looking for affirmation that God views him in a particular way, or that he has a certain kind of special relationship with the divine source of all created things. And Mozart seems to be of a different character. He seems to have, frankly, more of a lust for it. He approaches it like he's a glutton for beauty. And, you know, I think there's a sense in which if Salieri's attitude toward music had been more like his attitude towards sweets, he might have been saved. But yeah, that's basically my take on the movie Amadeus, is that in order to do something truly great, to give the world something to talk about, you have to be all about this stuff. You have to be in it for the love of the game. Which, speaking of which, I just got this chat in my Kick chat from Christopher71R saying, "Hey homie, I can share your stream in a Kick community to help hit 200 followers and 800 viewers and also earn $1,000 per stream. But I gotta add this guy on Discord? I'm not signing up for an app called Discord. I'm adding Christopher71R to my restream block list." It's crazy that one of our most widely used communication apps is called Discord. It's like if McDonald's was called Gluttony or something. That's not original to me. That's from a tweet. You can look it up.
Just wallowing in melancholic solitude. I'm not mad at it. What
There's worse ways to spend your time.
To do, what I can't stand, what's just absolutely miserable, just a hellish state, is walking around constantly stressed.
That's the attitude of a prey animal, right? A rabbit, a squirrel, something who's, has as one of their primary drives in life just to not get eaten by something big and scary. Contrast with the laziness of a lion or a tiger.
Constantly anxious, spiked cortisol, just
a house cat
always.
even.
There are periods of my life where I've lived like this, and it just sucks so bad. I cannot tell you how much I refuse. And this is the biggest critique of modernity that I could have, is that
when I spike my cortisol, it's on my own terms, the way God intended, with fresh brewed coffee.
Creates states like this. This chronically elevated cortisol, it runs off of it. I'm totally convinced if you look throughout history, if you look in nature, natural settings, people never lived like this, chronically stressed. This is a...
I feel like yes and no. They didn't have the same kinds of chronic stresses, but they had chronic stresses from, like, uncertainty of where tomorrow's meals were going to come from. And I don't know, maybe that's a caricature of pre-modern societies, but, like, I think there's this whole noble savage impulse to, like, idealize primitive living conditions, and in one sense, yes, as animals, we're adapted to live, as it were, in the wild. It seems there is a certain strain of human being that does not breed in captivity.
Modern thing. People have to take drugs just to function now because they're so fucking wired.
Okay, but also, you think people living in the jungle weren't taking drugs? That's neither here nor there.
All of the time. And it is so miserable. And of course, it's easy to sit here and complain about modernity when, I'm making a video on the computer to upload to the internet. I understand. My life would be looking very different if I wanted to completely avoid all of these kinds of things. So what you have...
Back in the day, if you had a real problem with someone, you could just kill them and leave town, move somewhere else, set up a whole new life under a new name, and life was just cool.
What you have to do is you have to find a way to navigate this without becoming chronically stressed, and you have to acknowledge the problems that it has, and you have to carve a reality for yourself where you don't have to endure this kind of thing, because I genuinely think no creature should ever have to. In nature, there are cortisol spikes, okay? If you're about to engage in combat, if you encounter a predator in the wilderness, your cortisol spikes. It floods through your body, and it kind of grounds you in material reality. That's like chemically what it does. It elevates your senses, makes you hypersensitive, prepares you for a fight or flight response.
I think that's why I and so many other people find coffee so conducive to computer programming, because it grounds you in your senses, and I feel very much, I feel keyed up and stimulated, and I would say a bit more sensitive to the various discrepancies between my assumptions and reality that one inevitably encounters when making software that's more than a little bit complicated.
This is kind of what we're built for. Cortisol serves a purpose. It helps us survive in quick bursts.
I feel like I'm speaking as more like a ballistic motion, and it's like when the last sentence that I want to say gets fired off, then I fire off the impulse to hit the spacebar and play the video, but I'm still actually playing out the sentence that I wanted to say. As, form factors, aspects of the process that I'm still refining as I get used to the stuff.
But the threat's right there in nature. You see it, your cortisol spikes, you run, you're done.
And then you gotta shake out the trauma, one of those trauma release exercises. That's why zebras don't get ulcers.
Set to your natural equilibrium. In modern society, it's like the stresses are so abject and existential. People live in this constant state of...
It's like, not Zero, but the original H.P. Lovecraft in Nyarlathotep. He talks about the sense of a danger widespread and all-embracing, Here we go. Yeah. The general tension was horrible. To a season of political and social upheaval was added a strange and brooding apprehension of hideous physical danger, a danger widespread and all-embracing, such a danger as may be imagined only in the most terrible phantasms of the night. He's a delightful writer, really.
Elevated cortisol. And
But the thing about how the modern economy is a scam to raise your cortisol is, I feel like it's another perspective on the same phenomenon that is described by Nick Land in his essay Machinic Desire, which I have in this wonderful little volume, Fanged Noumena, when Nick Land says, "A machinic desire can seem a little inhuman, as it rips up political cultures, deletes traditions, dissolves subjectivities, and hacks through security apparatuses, tracking a soulless tropism to zero control. This is because what appears to humanity as the history of capitalism is an invasion from the future by an artificial intelligence space that must assemble itself entirely from its enemies' resources." And this point about the invasion from the future is, I think, an important one that has real, like, technical purchase on our present situation, in the sense that our whole economy runs on debt because of credit creation as the primary means by which money enters the economy. And so literally the way that money gets into the economy is from the future in the form of debts. And so this cortisol spiking, sense of all-pervading danger that we feel is, at the human scale, what the self-preservation instinct of capitalism looks like. And not just, self-preservation, but actively an impulse towards growth. Like a Schopenhauerian will to life or Nietzschean will to power sort of thing. And when you think about it, the way that the capitalist system runs is on our desires. And there's a deep sense in which the fragmentation of society that is affected by capitalism, that, Marx actually has such high praise for in the Communist Manifesto. All that is holy is profaned, all that is solid melts into air, and we're plunged in the icy water of egotistical calculation. But Marx really admired bourgeois capitalism because it was revolutionary, because it dissolved the old social structures of the Middle Ages and laid the groundwork for the total reinvention of modes of social organization that Marx saw coming. But this atomization of society does not stop at the individual as if our minds are some inviolable whole. It breaks us down. It breaks our minds down into constituent desires which get plugged into feedback loops with various techno-economic systems. And we find ourselves increasingly at cross purposes with ourselves. And maybe nothing in that resonates with the experience of anyone watching, because of course no one's watching except someone who wants to shill their fucking goddamn Discord.
The stresses are so bitch. It's like, oh, bills, oh, social anxiety, all this gay stuff. You're not even actually facing real problems. It's not like you're actually going,
Right, and but that's part of why it's so stressful, is because the problems can't be resolved by, any great energetic expenditure of muscular force. There's no action you can take that feels cathartic and decisive in bringing about victory that would actually be efficacious in securing your interests against these abstract systems.
engaging in tribal warfare or anything fucking cool. They're just getting
Can you tell I've read a lot of Nietzsche?
thrown off by all these endless structures that mess with your entire psychology. So the task then is to identify these modern stressors, try to mitigate them as much as possible, because ultimately I am operating in the world, but I absolutely refuse to be stressed all the time, to live in fear.
And actually, returning to Nick Land, there is a deep sense in which the system does want us to be stressed all the time, living in fear, maybe a strong way of putting it, but the system wants us to be dissatisfied. The system really wants us to feel the dukkha that is at the heart of all experience. Just about a page earlier, Nick Land writes, "The obsolete psychological category of greed privatizes and moralizes addiction as if the profit-seeking tropism of a transnational capitalism propagating itself through epidemic consumerism were intelligible in terms of personal subjective traits." You know, I feel like there's some writers, you get the sense that they write in a way that they are kind of reading it to themselves out loud in their head. I don't so much get the sense with Nick Land. His writing seems much more like a kind of morphological puzzle game. It's tremendous fun, but it's not conducive to reading out loud. But wanting more is the index of interlock with cyber-positive machinic processes and not the expression of private idiosyncrasy. And so I feel like there's a demiurgic quality to capitalism in the way that it trains us to be dissatisfied. And, you know, it's capitalism is like an artificial nature. The real nature, you know, has its ups and downs, but it's divinely created. Capitalism, you know, emerges from the outworking of human desire at scale. But this wanting more is the index of interlock with cyber-positive machinic processes. That there is a way that the self-replicating nature of persistent complex phenomena militates against satisfaction. You know, to reference Marshall Berman, we're caught in our own Faustian tragedy of development. We can never say to the moment, "Stay, you are so beautiful."
Generally, I'd say the system runs on fear. That's what everything operates off of. That's how they keep the goys running the machine.
It's goyim.
And don't get it twisted, I'm not like a Gnostic. I talked about this stuff before, and it kind of seemed like I was I believe in some sort of strange, large Gnostic ontology where the whole structure of the world is built by demons to farm your loosh or whatever.
Not the real world that God made, but the artificial world of capitalism is much more fairly characterized in that way.
That's not what I believe. I don't believe it's the structure of the world, the structure of existence itself, but I do believe it is a structure within the world, within existence, that is real. And it's up to you whether or not you're just going to be farmed forever.
Right, and like, Nick Land's view of the world is so bleak. You know, if you ask Nick Land, he would say all there is the loosh farm. Whereas a Christian perspective would say the loosh farming aspect of the world is a result of the fall, and that this world is full of fallen entities that are abstract intelligences that materially manifest as processes of optimization that seek nothing outside their own optimization. It's a system that wants to be its own god. And I feel like there's, you know, Yuval Noah Harari has this reading of history in totally materialistic terms, where he talks about gods and spirits as being sort of precursor abstractions to our modern, more functional notions of like corporations and intellectual property and all this very abstract yet causally efficacious stuff that runs our society. And I tend to turn Harari's view of things on its head because I think he's just wrong in his materialist assumptions. And so I think, no, actually, these newer, more abstract modes of social organization have a spiritual aspect to them, and we don't acknowledge that there are more personal spiritual aspects to reality than are dreamt of in modern materialist philosophy.
You can actually maybe enjoy this life and not live in a constant state of panic. But a real fear farm does certainly exist, and that's just the body.
C.S. Lewis would call these macrobes, and you know, people who live fear-driven lives plugged into the system are like mitochondria. They're the powerhouse of these evil macrobes that are eating society. And so, turn on, tune in, drop out, and all that.
Debt slavery of today, where you have to grind and grind for your livelihood, and your bucks are shredded away by taxation and inflation. You're working for something infinitely alchemized, but it's like basically every part of modernity, its purpose is to like spike your cortisol. Its purpose is to make you chronically stressed. It's crazy.
And I mean, in some ways, that's like saying everything in nature, its purpose is to capture energy from the sun. Like, yes, the things that do that more successfully will be the things that persist and thrive at the expense of things that don't as effectuate such capture as well.
The food we eat, obviously, from day one, they're trying to spike your cortisol. They make you wake up early and go to school where you sit down for 8 hours.
I always hated going to school.
And listen to some harpy yap about some shit. A lot of it's so pointless, and it's almost like the point of it is to be a torture chamber. Who's going to be like a better nurse? Someone who finds a mentor in a hospital when they're a kid and just goes there, trails them, learns by doing? Or someone who goes to school for like 20 years? Obviously the former.
But this is a problem with the bigness and interconnectedness of the world, that it's just harder to create these one-on-one mentorship opportunities. You need systems that can, at scale, feed larger quantities of people into the system.
The purpose is to be a torture chamber. It's not to make you good at shit. Because if you want to...
I think that's a strong way of putting it. The purpose of school isn't to be a torture chamber. The purpose of school is to give kids somewhere to go so that their parents can live their adult lives without having to drag kids around everywhere.
Good at shit, you do it. I think it particularly hurts young men to not be living in the world of action. They come up with these ridiculous, like, psychological models where it's like, some people are audible learners, some people are visual learners, and some people are kinesthetic learners. That's got to be one of the most retarded examples of modern psychology I can think of.
See, I feel like I don't take issue with the idea that different people might be more comfortable with different sensory modalities. That seems like the most obvious thing in the world to me, because, like, I don't know, I'm profoundly gifted at reading and writing, but I have never had any kind of talent for visual arts, and I think that's just how my mind is organized. And different people, you know, I like using the example of dyslexia, because in dyslexia, I strongly suspect that it's a question of using the wrong lobe of your brain to perceive text, that a dyslexic reading of a text is one that is much more influenced by the parietal lobe with its spatial awareness than the temporal lobe with its object recognition awareness. And so when you see, like, you know, this coffee mug, which is more full of coffee than I would like as I'm doing this little stunt, but You can see here the handle is out here and it makes like a letter B, or from your perspective it's like a letter D, but I can turn it around and it makes the other one. Or I could flip it upside down and it would be like a P or a Q. And obviously it's the same object the whole time, it's just taking on different orientations in 3D space. And that's the kind of thing that we manage with our parietal lobe. You have all this visual processing goes on at the back of your brain and splits into two streams. One stream goes up into the parietal lobe, that's the aware pathway, that's about spatial orientation. And then another stream goes into the temporal lobe, which is somewhat lower, and that's the what pathway, that's object recognition. And you need to perceive letters with your object recognition circuits and not your spatial orientation circuits, or else it's the letter B and D and P and Q are manifestly the same thing, because seeing an object like that in 3D space, they would be, the same thing, just seen from different angles. It's like in the Borges story, Funes the Memorious. He has a perfect memory for everything. And so, in his mind, you see a dog from one angle, and you see a dog from another angle, and those two views are just so different in infinitely many aspects that Funes the Memorious finds that he has no grounds for calling them impressions of one and the same dog. And so, it's this combinatorial explosion, information overload, failure to solve the relevance problem, which, if you've been following me, there's a handful of months that I've been doing this serious stream. You've heard me talk a lot about John Vervaeke and relevance realization. And I'm still a big believer in the perennial relevance of relevance.
You're doing something kinesthetically, when you're actually doing it, you're also engaged, you're also hearing it and seeing it. So there's more sense data. Everybody's a fucking kinesthetic learner. I love when you're trying to learn a new board game, someone yaps about it for 30 minutes and then you just play the board game, you're confused for 5 minutes. Maybe you ask a couple questions and then you learn it by playing it. Always happens. It's even a part of actual game design. The best tutorials are where they kind of subtly show it to you. They're not just yapping at your face. So you learn by doing. Anyways, it's not, there are some things, specialized things, you probably have to study. That makes sense. But you're going to sit here and tell me you're supposed to just sit down for 8 hours and that's good for kids to do. And then they send you home. You can't even chill afterwards because then they give you more stuff to do at home that hangs over you. So it's just elevated cortisol right when you step in that, John. And also, it is an artificially brutal social hierarchy. That's the thing.
And luckily I didn't really experience that. I went to a nice Catholic school. We were all pretty much upper middle class. And I think I didn't have the kind of aura of weakness that would have got me bullied, even though I was always a little strange. I was always the class genius, and so I felt like my status wasn't really in question in a lot of contexts, because I could always fall back on the fact that I did so well in school. I didn't really have to care about other stuff.
School. Okay, in a communal environment where you're growing up that way, there's always going to be some sort of dominance, some sort of things between kids. But in school, it's extra bad because you're basically detached. You're separated from everybody that you love. It's not a real community. You're just thrown in. It's almost like a...
But I feel like that's an important part of growing from a child into an adult, is you need to lose this emotional dependence on your parents and your family and go out and become your own person.
Prison with just a bunch of other random kids, and just basically in prison, the first thing that happens is that you gang up and pick on weak people. That's exactly what happens. And that paired with the already elevated cortisol of even going to school, even if you have a fun social life there, you're going to school, you gotta sit down, you gotta do...
I think I'm about 10 years older than Gerby Johnson here, but yeah, I didn't experience this kind of state of nature in school.
All the work and just listen to somebody yap when you just want to play and like do things. And
the bit about listening to somebody yap all day really does hit home. But you know, as a kid, I prided myself on my ability to sit still, and it's something that still served me very well as an adult. I find that I'm so much more patient than the people I tend to encounter. It's kind of unnerving to them.
World of action like a young boy should. Not only are you dealing with that, but also you're just thrown into this environment where, you know, you're a little different, you're a little weird, you're a little whatever, and you just get violated, picked on.
Yeah, luckily that was not my experience, weird as I was.
Where like your parents, your family, your close ones, your real friends are near, and you're not just thrown into a school. No grown-ups that like you are there. Like a lot of these teachers are fucking evil, but it's not to say they're evil, but they're just...
See, I was liked plenty by my teachers, and that was worth about jack shit.
Like grown-ups who have their own problems and whatever. They don't actually love you. They don't actually like you. They can't actually care for you. Kids, you're subjected to a ridiculous amount of stress so early. Kids are starting to be so miserable so early. I remember being so miserable in school. And
I definitely felt like there was a real decline in my quality of life going from kindergarten to first grade. And I don't know if it was that the work was so much more boring than what we'd been doing the previous year. I know I didn't like having to wear the uniforms. That was one thing about going to a Catholic school. But it's very ironic, because I think in preschool I went through a phase where I had like these red, green, and blue striped shirts, and I would only want to wear those shirts to school, and each shirt had matching socks. And they were striped shirts. One was red, one was green, one was blue, if I remember correctly. And I just insisted on wearing the same clothes all the time. And so call it the narcissism of small differences, that I had my own rather strong opinions, actually, about what I was supposed to be wearing every day, and the school had a different opinion. But yeah, that was one thing that I know bothered me about the transition from kindergarten to first grade, and yeah, looking back on it, but I feel like it wasn't even that life was more boring. You know, the school day was a couple hours longer, but I think it was just the sense of having gone through preschool and kindergarten and like ascended up that hierarchy, now coming into first grade, and you know, it's like being a freshman, but just seeing how many more years of schooling I still had ahead of me in the concrete form of, you know, the classrooms for second and third grade, etc. But yeah, I was generally not happy with school, but you know, my strategy was kind of to keep my head down and get through it. And so I feel like there's a very visceral level at which I understand the difficulty of the AI alignment problem, because that was more or less my childhood. I pursued a strategy of, you know, being compliant and performing for adults and the systems that ran my life, what they wanted to see from me. And I did that well enough that I made it out of the system and was given the freedom to live my own life as an adult. And yeah, I more or less never looked back. There were some times I thought about like going back to grad school before I was in the job I have now. And yeah, I think it's still a possibility. It's arguably more of a possibility now that I'm putting more of my ideas out here publicly, that I have something that's, I mean, not as coherent as I would like if I were trying to write these ideas down in a way to, share with a professor and say, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Do you think your program has a place for me? But frankly, that's a humiliation ritual that I had enough of going from high school to college, and so it feels like that's a measure of last resort, is going back to school.
Like, oh, you just gotta toughen up. Dude, things do not have to be this way. I'm not living this way. That's what I'm telling you. I'm putting everything on engineering a life where I don't have to live like that. Or subject my children to things like that. Dude, the cortisol spike when you wake up from a dream, or like after a break and you have school. Oh boy.
That was always the worst.
Oh boy.
Just remembering that I had to go to school the next day.
Now I think about like, oh, at least I don't have to go to school. Literally a torture chamber. I remember in school I was a little bit of a tard. Not like with the sped, but just a little jolty. What I would do is I'd like just sort of stand up. When everybody's supposed to be sitting, I'd just stand up. I really wanted to stand up, stretch my legs, like move a little bit. I'd always get reprimanded, always yelled at. I just wanted to stand up.
See, I never had that problem. Or if I did, I was young enough. Oh my goodness, I got a comment in my Rumble chat. Oh, I wish I could share my OBS window in OBS, but I'll just have to go to Rumble directly. Oh my goodness, I'm in private, I'll have to log in, but no, we are on a chat adventure. I don't remember. That's my password. No. Yes. Okay. What are we looking at? We're looking at my content, chillin' like a rockstar villain. This guy. Okay, shut up. Expose. Oh wow, it's with a 0 and an O. That's subtle. Expose this devil's. It's rumble.com. Religion, mind control, Buddhism, Freemasonry exposed. Like this is the good stuff. This is what I wanna. Oh wow, and it's only 2 minutes and 24 seconds. We're doing this.
Membership. I don't have a card or a special handshake.
Obama, the Antichrist.
A special handshake.
What does this have to do with anything? People put their hands together. Okay, but this guy's obviously just aping the Dalai Lama. Prove to me that he's not. Amazing. I love this stuff. I eat this stuff up. It's like I was talking about on Friday with how LLMs are spurious correlation machines. They will fill in the gaps in whatever you present to them. It's this kind of thinking. That's why spending too much time conversing with LLMs is schizogenic. It messes with your mind. It's not healthy. I'm sorry, this is so silly. I've really got to add this cat to my block list. Use it forever. Okay, but like, what does this have to do with anything? You have Obama saying it's not a secret handshake to be in the Freemasons.
There's no official membership.
There's no official membership. I don't have a card, a special handshake or anything. There's no official, a special handshake or anything. But okay.
Card or, you know, a special handshake or anything like that. There's no.
Okay, but this guy is clearly just gesturing as he speaks like people do. I don't know. You know, reading his body language, his position is very closed off. Although, what is it from Clueless, where they have the legs crossed towards each other? That's an unequivocal sex invite. Again, like I said about the manically digressive style.
You know, a special handshake or anything.
And this is some white lady? Like, how is she not canceled for cultural appropriation or something? Okay. This is a transvestigation thing. But the Dalai Lama has a male skull? Or is this showing that he doesn't match the male skull? He has a female skull? This skull spot. What am I even looking at? I'm gonna be honest. I need some more explicit verbalization of what these images are demonstrating. That what their jaws are too wide to be bona fide human males? Am I 100% sure that says male skull? Maybe it says female skull and this black bar is cutting off the first two letters. I don't even know what's real anymore. What is being demonstrated here? What is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Endless knot. It's a slideshow on symbols in Buddhism. I'm starting here with the eight-spoked wheel of Dharma, or the wheel of truth.
Okay. What do you call a figure with 8 corners? An octagon. What does any of this have to do with anything? I love this stuff. It's because, you know, it's like a training ground for relevance realization. You know, it's like lifting weights. There's no particular need for this piece of metal to be, you know, elevated so many feet in the air or whatever, but you do it because it's stimulates you in a certain way that helps develop your capabilities. And like, I don't know, you can't even assume this anymore, but I do assume that a real human being had a series of experiences that led them to think that they had some sort of message to convey to the world. And the form that this message takes is this, like, terminally schizophrenic bullshit. Like, this is literally an AI-generated image. Look at how the fingers are not discrete. They run into each other because this is not a real person. This is made by AI. I don't know, Mr. Skull Spotter. I feel like you're sending me on a wild goose chase. Makes me glad I blocked this guy. I will not follow for more, thank you. We live in a time of miracles and wonders. That's one of the most insipid music videos I've ever seen. And back to Gerby.
And in retrospect, like, dude, you're not supposed to be sitting down for hours and hours on end as a young child.
Unless you're a Buddhist monk, say.
That's very bad.
It'll make your skull into one of those stylized skulls that Skull Spotter had. I mean, God only knows what that guy used to be.
Wanted to get up. Dude, chairs in general are just kind of go-away, honestly. Like, that's why I'm standing up. You got the energy. It starts you off early, elevating the cortisol.
Chairs in general just kind of go away.
So you go to this thing that unanimously, particularly makes young men totally miserable. And then if you have the gall, if you're not just like a zombie who sits there the whole time, if you want to talk, if you want to be energetic, if you want to maybe stretch your legs a little bit, oh, well, this kid's clearly retarded. Like, this kid is deficient. He's not sitting there. He's not absorbing this information. You got to give him drugs. So he locks in, so he focuses, so he can sit there for 8 hours and concentrate, you know.
Honestly, though, like, I never felt like I was that kind of kid who needed Adderall or Ritalin or any kind of stimulant, but, like, when I went to college and I started smoking weed, I felt like, you know, where has this been all my life? That if I could have been getting high every day when I went to school for all those years that it was so boring, it would have been a much more pleasant ride, is how it seems to me in retrospect.
So it happened to me a little bit. I remember they put me on Vyvanse.
And the thing is, like, you hear the word special needs and you think retarded, but gifted people have special needs too. And yeah, I would argue there's an important sense in which the school that I went to was not a great environment to meet the needs of my developing mind. And, you know, it wasn't the worst place in the world. I did okay for myself. But yeah, I remember my childhood as being emotionally turbulent. And, you know, mostly tried to hide this because I felt like I just wanted to get through it to where I could, you know, live my own life and not have to deal with this stuff. And so I did a decent job of hiding it. There were some ways that I acted out, but, you know, I stabbed a guy with a pen once, but that's neither here nor there. I think I was in 6th grade. But honestly, that kid was annoying and people didn't like him. They left the school the next year. I don't think I was a bully. That was really a one-off thing, but that kid was really annoying.
I think it was. I was in elementary school, and I took it for like a couple days, but I really didn't like it. And my mom was a little bit base, and she allowed me to get off of it. Thank God. Thank God, because what...
It wasn't in the viscera or anything. He put his hand on my shoulder, and I stabbed him in the arm. I think about at the crook of the elbow.
That's also something that could definitely contribute to high stress. Amphetamines, putting children on amphetamines. It either makes people like blank, sort of fluoride stare zombies, or it can make people real chronically stressed. Alternative forms of schooling, homeschooling is probably better. It is a double-edged sword though, because some kids get homeschooled and they just like don't do shit, and they are pretty dumb. But if it's like done right, the kids who are homeschooled, if it's done very well, they're way better off. Way better off. They're like very talented. And what if you don't want to go yourself?
Honestly, one of the nice things about not having kids of my own is that I don't really have to think about these kinds of decisions in an immediate practical sense. I feel like if I had kids, I would just be a neurotic mess. It's like, you know, my parents were great, and they were very loving, and they did what they could to help us succeed, and I still turned out as fucked up as I am. So if I had kids, there'd be no hope for them.
Oh, it sucks so bad. I don't want to do it. What do they tell you? They say, well, you have to, because this is how you end up making money. If you don't, you are going to be broke. You're going to be living on the streets. So it's fear-based. It runs on fear. And things don't have to be this way. There is a system that exists which seeks to spike your cortisol, which seeks to harvest your loosh.
But also, living on the streets isn't so bad. You can get free needles and shit.
Keep you stressed all the time, but you don't have to live that way. No creature should ever live in a state of constantly elevated stress. That is just so nightmare.
Again, it's the life of a prey animal. Someone whose main task in life is not to be eaten.
And that it's become normal is very bad, and it's purely a product of modernity. And also what spikes your cortisol is all the technology, obviously. all this comparison, there's that stuff, but there's also everybody can just reach you and talk to you at any time. And it's like, it's a lot more chill if I'm writing letters. They take a while, you know? Sometimes you get a phone call at a certain time, it just really spikes your court. And at a certain point, it is, okay, like, you have to accrue some mental toughness, okay? I'm not going to blame the world when something...
You should be able to talk on the phone, for one. It's not so scary. And if you don't like what someone's saying on the phone, you can always hang up.
Like that happens. You just got to be like, okay, yeah, sometimes it can be a little stressful. I'm not really evolved to do this, but I understand. I can do things. We're fine. Because of what cortisol does, it makes you hyper-focus on the material. It makes you hypersensitive. Living in chronic stress is living in survival. That's what it is, basically.
Yeah. And having seen both sides of it, I can say it is so much nicer to live life in creative mode.
But it's so strange because the type of survival is not real survival. It's all artificial scarcity. But because of what cortisol does, because you're living in...
The artificial scarcity point, I think, is totally misbegotten because it's it's such a modern assumption. It overlooks the fact that scarcity is the natural default. All abundance is artificial.
Survival, what it does is it disconnects you from the higher forms, from the...
And so, okay, the regulation of our abundance necessitates a kind of artificial imposition of scarcity in certain sectors, but there is, as it were, a lot less scarcity to go around than there was in the state of nature.
The more spiritual. It grounds you in the gross material because you're so wired. That's what cortisol is.
I am so wired.
It's a survival chemical. So it's no secret that modern society is so devoid of any deeper spiritual truth when it runs off of cortisol. We place so much importance on extrinsic values, not intrinsic ones. That's like the self-determination theory, and it's because we run off fear, we run off stress, and these things are survival chemicals. And the weird, messed up part about it is the body kind of becomes reliant. It almost becomes addicted to the stress chemicals at a certain point. So people can't even see another way. They're crazy.
This was honestly a challenge for me in transitioning to like my current job where I'm working from home and I have a lot of freedom. I had to get used to sitting down and doing work when there wasn't like acute pressure being put on me. Because yeah, that was just kind of how I learned to get things done. If there was no acute urgency to get this or that thing done in the moment, then it's not worth doing anything besides, slacking off and getting high.
I can already hear people going like, "Oh, you're just a loser. You can't do anything. Oh, it's so stressful for you, huh? You can't just, work a job and get a career and go to school. Oh, it's so sad. It's so scary." And I get it. I mean, I don't want to be the kind of guy who just can't do anything.
Yeah.
And you can have responsibilities today that, compared to the life.
Yeah, as like before this job, I worked at Whole Foods, and I'd applied for a job in the produce department. But then when the produce manager was going to hire me, she said they were pretty short-staffed in the meat department and wondered if I would be willing to pick up a couple shifts a week in meat, and I said sure. And so I got trained on both departments as part of my onboarding to Whole Foods, and I was a really solid utility player for them. I worked a couple shifts in grocery and in seafood as well. I really learned a lot in that job. It was a very cool way to spend my time in some respects, but man, do I wish it paid more. I felt like I had no disposable income in that time. But I feel like there was another point that I wanted to make about pressure. No.
If you would live 1,000 years ago are more stressful, but you just thing. And you can have responsibilities today that, compared to the life you would live 1,000 years ago are more stressful, but you just have to have this kind of mental toughness. I understand it.
Oh yeah. Like, so there was one time I was a few months into the job, and I was just eating lunch on my mandatory half-hour lunch break, and I was in like the break room, and there was some other guy there, and we were just making small talk. And yeah, I was saying that I've been hired in produce, but I've been trained up in produce and meat, and yeah, I spent about half my time in each department, and yeah, at entry level wages, this guy said, "Well, they're really getting their money's worth out of you," and he said it in this tone like it was a bad thing for my employer to be getting their money's worth out of me. Like it's aspirational to be more of a liability than an asset at your workplace. And that just, I don't know, that seems to me like an example of the kind of lack of toughness where it's like beneath you to do as good a job as you're capable of somehow. And I don't know, this wasn't someone that I talked with a whole lot. We were just making chit chat, but that really rubbed me the wrong way in terms of what it said about the outlook of the speaker.
But there is like a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing going on with some of these people. People like
maybe that's
about
me.
How much they work. That's so crazy. Oh, you work 40 hours a week? That ain't nothing.
But I don't know. I never worked more than I would occasionally pick up a sixth shift in the week, but yeah, maybe I was kind of a bitch for Whole Foods, but I mean, by and large, I enjoyed my job. The modal hour of work in either produce or meat was actually pretty enjoyable. Again, I really wish it paid more, because I felt like I never had enough money. I was on what I would call the rent cycle, where I would get paid every 2 weeks, and rent would be due every month, and so I would never have to wait more than 2 weeks from the start of the month to when I would get the paycheck that would let me pay rent. But it was a whole thing where it was like you had to pay a $25 late fee if your rent was more than 5 days late, and if it was more than 10 days it was $50, and if it was more than 15 days it was $100, and I never had to pay the 15-day late fee because it was never more than 2 weeks until my next paycheck. But there came a point where I just took it for granted that rent would be due and I wouldn't have the money to cover it until I got my first paycheck of that month, and that was just how I lived.
I was breaking my back for 60 hours a week.
But like, I like to be valuable. I get off on feeling like I am useful. Like this business is able to operate at a higher level because I bring my capabilities to bear on the job in a way that's enthusiastic and not begrudging. And that's something I actually take a lot of pride in. I think that's one of the most valuable aspects of my character. And maybe it is Stockholm Syndrome, but it made me very well liked at Whole Foods. Not that any of those people are my friends anymore.
And only eating peanut butter sandwiches for 40 years. Oh yeah, well, I work 7 days a week, 12 hours.
And, I mean, it's not like we had any kind of falling out. I still go there a couple times a month, and I'll say hi and I'll chit-chat with people, but I've never been good at, like, converting work friends into outside of work friends. I don't know how that alchemy happens.
Day and night. You think that's bad? It's like they just keep on, oh, who's the bigger slave? Here's what I see. When it's like almost bragging about, it's like dudes trying to one-up each other about how badly they've been raped. When I was 12, when my mom told me she was obese, she was like 45 years old, she just started touching me and Oh yeah, you think that's cool? When I was walking down the street the other night, 3 black guys came out of nowhere and just started pounding me. So you think you're tough? Oh yeah, you think you're tough for that? Man, when I was 16, I was abducted by the Hasidics, placed in an underground tunnel. They kept me tied there to a radiator for 4 days. Oh, you think that's bad? I went to India, found myself trapped on the streets of Calcutta, So soon enough, I found myself in an underground nightclub. 2,000 Indians all jump on top of me. They're just pounding my. It's like, dude, this is what I hear when people are like, unemployed Zoomer compares having a career to getting reviews. Oh man, but it's not that. It's not wrong, is it? No, but it's just this thing of like how much
depends on the job.
It's like you're just a slave. You're just being violated. It's actually insane. You know,
some people getting violated is their job.
What I hear if someone's going to be like, "Oh, you're a baby, you can't do anything." I actively see a man just getting molested, and he's literally on his hands and knees, getting pounded, looking at me like, "Oh, little baby can't do. Oh, little baby doesn't want to get molested." Dude, I don't envy your position. I don't envy your courage.
Take that molestation like a man.
I don't want any part of this. You can sit here and act like I'm not tough or whatever for not. Honestly, I'm completely fine with having a sensitive and pure rectum. Okay, I don't need to get pounded.
Facts.
I don't see that as being a source of my masculinity or anything. You can have that, bro. Fine. I'm not tough. I'm not a tough guy. I want to live an actual life. The jobs are just adult daycare. And that's also kind of why...
Which, this is one thing that I really appreciated about my job at Whole Foods, is it was so obviously not adult daycare. It was just very clear moment to moment that I was doing things that people needed. You know, the food on grocery store shelves doesn't just sprout up there naturally. It's someone's job to put it there. And it's very important. And, you know, I've never looked at grocery stores the same way again. I'm like that guy from White Noise. All the letters and numbers are here. All the shapes and colors. Wouldn't you be convinced that something transcendent was about to happen amidst so much brightness? That's a great book.
Rules needed is because both parents now have to work. So you just got to go to school. You got to go to the public school. And that's kind of just daycare too. You're just like milling around doing useless shit and eating slop. I honestly think chronic stress is very much a modern thing. And no organism can live under this chronic stress for long. I think all sorts of diseases are developed. The body
and again, I think we're discovering that certain types of human beings are not inclined to breed in captivity.
just seeks to eliminate itself at a certain point. In like a tribal scenario, all of these mental health problems, even a lot of physical health problems, they barely exist. On some Weston A. Price kind of thing. Weston A. Price in the early 20th century, he traveled all around to different tribes.
But also, like, people used to have a lot more kids. Infant and child mortality used to be higher, and so, you know, I also feel like if someone commits suicide at 15 years old, it's a way bigger deal in the modern world where, you know, the one child represents a much larger proportion of your whole lineage than, you know, back in the day when it was standard to have like half a dozen kids.
Notice they had perfectly developed teeth and jaws, perfect health, this kind of stuff. It's written about in like Benjamin Franklin's, I think in certain letters he wrote, a lot of American settlers, they ended up joining Indian society, or they were captured by the Native American Indians, and upon being released or upon being taken back to white society, they would return. They could not be kept home. They always returned back to this tribal life. Many white men and women joined Indian society, and the opposite never happened. It went from civilized to tribal. And
you know, the point is well taken that a pre-civilizational existence is what the human animal is better adapted to. But I feel like there's another way of looking at it where it's like, well, metal rusts and not the other way around. Iron oxide doesn't spontaneously release oxygen and convert itself back into pure iron. And so, you know, it's like at some level these iron atoms have a stronger affinity for oxygen than they do for their own kind. They're race traders. That's why the Rust Belt is called that.
Alternatively, Native American, ethnic, Indian people who were raised in white society yearned for the tribal life. So whites raised among Native Americans, they wanted to stay there. Native Americans raised among the whites, they...
Right, and that's consistent with the idea that civilization represents a huge investment of negentropy in ordering things a certain way, and the constraints necessary to maintain that order will in some ways cut against the grain of our natural human inclinations. Because if they didn't, then everyone would have a civilization.
wanted to go back to the tribal life. Now, I'm not someone who hates what I am at all. I carry no guilt whatsoever. The Indian society had the Native American society had lots and lots of problems. They tortured people. They did all sorts of crazy shit. I understand this, but you're delusional if you're sitting here and you're going to tell me there's nothing there. This kind of stuff.
But honestly, our society has the opposite problem. We're way too soft on criminals. If we studied the history of Native American torture methods and brought some of that action into our criminal justice system, our streets would probably be a lot safer. Just saying, that there's a trade-off space here, and we've chosen to locate ourselves at one end of this trade-off space. There's a whole continuum of, strict rules and harsh punishments leading to more social order. I don't actually want the United States to be Singapore, but my goodness, we could do a lot better than we do.
It's talked about in a book called Tribe by Sebastian Junger. What I'm saying is that this chronic stress, it's a total modern thing. It's a real Kali Yuga decline product of our time, okay?
And it's what it is an invasion from the future. Like my whole spiel about money comes from the future through credit creation, and so our society is increasingly driven by what we owe the future, to lift a title of a book that's not super pertinent here, but what we owe the future in a monetary rather than a moral sense is what drives the economy. The imperative toward perpetual growth to pay off the debts that are taken on in order to facilitate the growth in the first place.
The idea that it's common to live like this is a torturous way to exist. You can make it good. Okay? Let me stop dooming.
Yeah. Do you think the first mitochondria felt that way about being trapped in the cell membranes of the first eukaryotes? Did they feel like slaves? Did they feel like this cytoplasm was a torture chamber? Who knows?
We're living in modernity. How do we navigate this? Because it is my sole mission. I cannot tell you how much I refuse to live this way. I'm low cortisol. This is my philosophy. This is my life, my way of life. I'll spike it occasionally for some real shit, but otherwise, low court, baby. Low court. I'm putting everything into living this way. A life where even if I do very well in the system, I accumulate lots of little bucks, little shekels. If it was a life lived in high cortisol, that's not how I analyze a life well lived. I'll be broke in low court all day, every day. I don't think that's the correct dichotomy. I think if you are low cortisol, if you go through life having fun, playful, blooming,
creative mode,
then you'll have all your needs taken care of. I do believe this. People can call it delusional, whatever.
And again, I felt like there were a handful of people at Whole Foods that I got Salieri vibes from, where I wanted to be more efficient at loading a box of lemons onto the shelf, just for love of the game, for the sheer aesthetic pleasure of. I called it the dance of the lemons. I would park my cart, right next to the table, and you do this with all kinds of things, but lemons have a nice shape. Oranges are good too. Limes are fun. They're more challenging because they're smaller. But yeah, I would just kind of stand and I would position myself with, oh my goodness, I can't orient myself relative to the camera. But I would position myself and I would have like my left hand over the box of fruit and I would have my right hand kind of resting on the shelf. And I would practice just tossing the fruits from my left hand to my right hand. And this was really like the graduation point of all my skill building. It started out much smaller scale, just, having a hand sit just above the box and toss it up from the box into that hand. And that hand can migrate farther from the box as I get more confident in my ability to reach the hand. And, I had a kind of superstition that it was easier to throw with my left and catch with my right because my left hand is operated by my right brain, and my right brain has a map of my whole body and better holistic spatial awareness, whereas my right hand is controlled by my left brain, which only perceives the right half of things. But I don't know if that's just me making too much of my esoteric cognitive science knowledge or if there's a real there, but I feel like I couldn't have a phenomenology of the task that was unpolluted by this knowledge, and so I was always biased toward feeling it as a little easier and more intuitive in one direction. I never thought to run experiments on this with any kind of rigor.
This is what I think. You gotta have that delusion, you gotta have some optimism. That's the only way to live in 2026. It is true. So how do you mitigate the constant stress? The first thing is controlling your thoughts, okay? If you think a thought, it can trigger a cortisol spike. When you think a thought, you can trigger downstream thousands of biochemical reactions in your body, and people act like it doesn't matter. Okay? Yes, your thoughts do control your reality. So that's the first thing, is you can control your thoughts so you're not thinking things that stress you out. You're not always thinking about your problems.
This is David Foster Wallace's point in his famous graduation speech. This is water. That the purpose of a liberal arts education is not to teach you what to think, but how to think, in the sense of teaching you strategies for allocating your attention in a healthy way. Oh, sorry about that. It's another window.
You have to have some sort of practice, some sort of ability, so you can select thoughts which do not generate excess cortisol. But there's only so much you could do. I mean, some people are probably better at it than others, but there's only so much I could do if I'm actively being violated, for example. I can't just select low cortisol thoughts and control everything and be like, oh, I'm good.
Funny that I mentioned David Foster Wallace, because he wrote a story about exactly this. It's the very last of the brief interviews with Hideous Men about the granola cruncher chick. And then, I don't have my copy of Brief Interviews with Hideous Men.
No, you kind of have to meet yourself halfway. So that's the first thing, is you don't have to remove all of your responsibilities. Oh, because I just want to be low cortisol. You can do things. You should do things. We're living in the world. So you have to control your thoughts. You have to actively, as an act of will, lower your cortisol. You can do that. But you do have to meet yourself halfway. You have to try to build a life which is conducive to low cortisol. Another big thing is what you eat. There's every so often there's this discourse where boomers start trashing younger generations for spending too much money on food and not living frugally, and that's why they can't buy houses. I'm done getting emotionally involved in this kind of thing. The discussion's gone.
Yeah, I feel like with respect to the houses thing, the fact that we have an unprecedented excess of home sellers relative to home buyers suggests that these people who are selling their homes need to be made, let's say, more acutely in need of liquidity. So, we, as a society, we need to incentivize the home selling class to lower the asking prices on their homes to prices that will allow the market to clear so that they can get the liquidity that they need. But people are trying to run this machine in the wrong direction, talking about cutting property taxes for seniors and cutting taxes on Social Security. If anything, Social Security should be paid the other way, from retired people to productive members of society who are still worth something. Because, like, if you're retired, you have ipso facto had your whole life to accumulate assets. And so, you should actually be giving back to society, reinvesting in the next generation that's going to build, the future that you're not going to be around to see. But, I mean, that's the problem with a lot of these boomers, is they're stuck at a stage of ego development where they literally can't conceptualize other minds.
I refuse, okay? I'm not going to spike my cortisol over that, arguing with these kind of people. Like, they're saying you should eat ramen, eat peanut butter. Like, I lived like this for a while, where I was kind of stressed out about money. I wanted to save and invest as much money as possible. So I created my spending habits and created a diet that was just very cheap. Oatmeal, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, like, some cheap pasta sort of meals that I can make. And I was eating this for a while. But I've really changed my opinion on these kind of things. So the number one investment you should make before a Roth IRA, before any sort of index fund, retirement account, is to spend money. You can spend more money on a good diet. Now, you shouldn't be spending excessive money on stuff that already isn't good for you. That's pretty bad. That's the worst of both worlds. But it's actually like, if you go to any of these finance channels, it's like 10 investments you should make in your late teens, early 20s. One of the first things they always say is, like, you should invest in yourself. And I always thought that was a pretty dumb answer. But this is actually the prime example. The food you eat, it really does dictate, your microbiome, your gut has a brain, all that kind of stuff.
They say you are what you eat, and that's actually not a metaphor. It's literally true, because what is your body made up of but the material that you put into it?
It dictates how you feel, and it's just so much more real than the extra goilers you're saving. So people are like, oh, you should just, like, eat ramen and slop for 40 years to save up your retirement account. That's so absurd. Like, even if we're operating under the assumption the whole empire isn't, like, gay and fragile. Oh, it's 5% returns every year, 10% da-da-da.
Honestly, I feel like the whole Strait of Hormuz kerfuffle has shown that the empire is a lot less fragile than a lot of its haters like to think.
Because we live in constant inflation, which will eventually destroy itself. Maybe not. Maybe nothing ever happens. Even still. And I'm not saying you shouldn't invest in a Roth IRA, okay? It's basic, like, you're only taxed on the earnings, so you may as well do it if you have the money. That's fine. Dude, the food you eat is so much more important than throwing this kind of money into index funds or whatever. Oh, look at the line goes up. Oh, all-time highs. Yippee, inflationary economy. Your cortisol's high, dude. Your kidneys are messed up. Your adrenal glands, they're pumping out too much cortisol. So this is what you do. You have to find a based diet, which will probably be quite different from what you normally hear about tradition.
A good piece of advice that I generally follow comes from Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying in their wonderful book, A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, is you want to shop around the edges of the grocery store. I will say, when I worked at Whole Foods, there's one thing I particularly liked about the produce and meat departments was that they were the closest to nature, along with seafood, because by and large, each product in the produce, meat, and seafood departments, you can tell that that product came from a single organism, and there's not, like, room for a whole lot of funny business in terms of, like, processing. You get an apple, it might have some weird chemicals on it, but, an apple comes from an apple tree, and whereas something like, you get applesauce, it could be full of fucking styrofoam filler for all you know. But there's an integrity to something that is a whole piece of an organism that is something I like to look for in my foods. I try to stay away from anything that's more processed than, like, cheese or bread. Cheese and bread are quite tasty. As G.K. Chesterton said, if all the trees were bread and cheese, there would be considerable deforestation in any part of England where I was living.
Nutrition science, which is all fake, and you should follow it. You should follow that. It will make this will lower your cortisol, which is much more important than stacking up little shekels. This is the first thing you should invest in.
And I mean, stacking shekels arguably has the opposite effect. A wise man once said, "Mo money, mo problems."
Yourself, your body. Okay? These boomers, oh, you just got to eat ramen and peanut butter. Dude, I ate a lot of peanut butter. I was like, oh, it's got good macros. It's pretty cheap. Lymph node, it clogs up your lymph nodes a lot if you didn't know this.
I did not know this.
My lymph nodes in my neck, the lower part of my jaw, big, puffy. So I was eating PBJs every fucking day. And you look at it as an investment. Like, if you eat the right food, you'll be more energetic, you'll feel better, and you will be able to make more money. You'll be able to do things better than anybody else because they're all eating goy slot. So yeah, start eating, start doing something like that. That's what you got to do.
And yeah, as far as like, what is the best diet? I feel like that's always just relative to you and your system, and that, you know, human beings live in just about every environment on Earth, and they traditionally would eat whatever they could find in their environment. And so I think human beings are very adaptable in terms of what we can eat and live off of, but like, your particular genetic profile is going to make certain foods agree or disagree with you more, and I think there's just so much individual variance there that it's hard to pronounce any kind of general rule.
Listen to these people telling you to live like a slave and eat slop. That's going to keep you in the system. That's going to keep you down. That's going to keep your cortisol high, make it so you can't utilize your thoughts properly or have enough energy to actually change your life and do things. These boomers are dumb, okay? I'm spending all sorts of money on high quality food. I'll go into debt, I don't care. There's no price too high. I got a subscription to a nice butcher, all grass fed beef. They treat the cows real nice.
Yeah, I used to be vegan for basically animal cruelty reasons, and I do feel better about eating the meat that I get from Whole Foods because it's all rated by the Global Animal Partnership. I'm particularly fond of these bison steaks from this brand Tender Bison, and I haven't done any research into the company, but just the branding and the vibes gives me the sense that, like, the animals that give me the bison steaks I eat probably had nice lives as far as bison lives go. But yeah, I'm not a vegan anymore, but I will say I still do care about the considerations that led me to be vegan, and I like that I'm in a position financially where I can pay a premium for pasture-raised eggs and, like, locally sourced grass-fed beef and milk and cream. I like that I can indulge in these moral luxuries that, you know, as nice as it is to help the animals, obviously the true motivation is for me to feel a certain way about myself and what kind of person I am. And so yeah, I guess I will pay a premium to feel this particular kind of way about myself.
I got a herd share. That's what I have to do in my state. Getting raw dairy, raw milk. These boomers want to go, oh no, you have to...
I'm not a raw milker.
It's not a discussion anymore, okay? My A2 raw dairy enforced kneecap is feeling pretty strong. I'm thinking a good flying knee straight to the rotting skull of a boomer could really do a lot of damage. I feel so good because I'm eating right and my cortisol's lower. Oh, but I could have put the extra $2,000 in a Roth IRA and, ooh, goy bucks, ooh. Your thoughts. You have to want to
fucking
create
Rothschild IRA.
That is more conducive to lower cortisol, and you have to curate your diet. And don't worry about the cost of such things because it is an investment that will pay for itself. Probably monetarily itself, you will make more money, but also you'll feel better, and that's way more important than the fake goy. One more little tip from Gerby. This one's much more practical. In the morning, set aside maybe 10 minutes to do a sort of mobility routine. Not really focused on flexibility so much. You can do stuff like that and that'll help, but on releasing the fascia. Because we live sedentary lifestyles, we're always sitting, and because we carry so much chronic stress, our fascia gets very tight. And this contributes to feeling stressed all the time. You carry trauma and stuff in there.
Body keeps the score.
It's kind of like a prime Conor McGregor, if you've ever seen that sort of video.
It's a 24/7 process to free the body. That's what I'm ultimately trying to do. I'm trying to become free. I'm trying to open up my body in all ways. I have a routine. I wake up, I drink water, I stretch, I shake it out. That's me beginning to free my body again after whatever amount of time I've been asleep. People just usually jump up, get out of bed straight away, go brush their teeth, eat their food, rush to wherever they have to go, do what they have to do, and their body is locking up. Their body's getting tighter and tighter and tighter until it just locks or cracks.
Prime Conor.
Fascinating creatures, hobbits. I mean the Irish.
Like that. Things like Cossack squats, even the actual McGregor motion he does, where he kind of lets the arms hang loose and then he swings his upper body, so he's that's good. Stuff like that. You can find some online. Just like a 10-minute mobility routine in the morning.
You know, I actually keep some free weights here in my home office, and so, you know, nothing serious. These are 8 pounds each, but, you know, I'll just kind of like dance around with them. I don't do any sort of prescribed exercise routine. I just kind of move around with them, keep myself mobile and flexible, and yeah, this is what I do while I'm waiting for my AI agents to finish up their work. And yeah, try not to aggravate my navel. 'Cause yeah, any doctors in the audience, does it look like I am developing an umbilical hernia here? And if anyone could give their professional opinion in the chat. Just I feel like it's a little asymmetrical. There's more wrinkles here, and there's more like a thing there, but I don't know. Let me know in the chat if anyone has any kind of opinion, but that's neither here nor there.
To loosen up your body, keep it from getting so tight, and release the fascia. This will contribute a lot to making you less chronically.
Look at me spilling my guts on the internet.
Stuff at the end. Nobody deserves to live in a way where they're constantly stressed. Change your life accordingly. It doesn't have to be like this. It could be chill, fun. You just gotta learn how to surf. Peace out.
Yeah, I certainly with respect to AI and software development, I feel like I am trying to ride this wave so that I don't drown. And you know, I like going on YouTube with no history and not signed in. See what kind of wrecks I get. I have not been following the Lego scandal that's being commented on here. I'm going to check out what this is. It's actually crazy 4 days ago, and then 18 hours ago it's getting extremely dangerous and scary. What do you got for us, Charlie?
I don't even know how to intro this video because there's nothing I can say that will actually do the scope of this corruption and diabolical scandal justice. But I will give you the premise. It's around Legos. And I know you probably immediately roll your eyes going, oh, that's probably nothing super crazy. Buster, you don't know the half of it. A YouTuber named Recklessbin conducted a thorough investigation on a huge Lego-related crime. It is a crazy web of malicious bad actors, shady individuals. It's like the Lego cartel. I don't know how to do this intro to really lay the foundation in a way that captures the scope because it is that big. So I highly recommend you watch his entire video. I'm going to go over a lot of it
Extremely
here because
chilling.
I have been captivated by this, and this is only part one. It actually, there's more to it, but I think it's only fitting that we
that's a good
start
point.
from the very beginning.
And spent his life collecting what's now known as the world's largest.
And so, Penguin Zero Moist Critical here is talking about this video from Reckless Ben. I tracked down the thief who stole $200,000 of Lego, which is 3 times as long as the video we're watching now, so I'm not going to
Star
switch to
Wars
it.
collection ever. It's estimated to be worth around $200,000. And then the entire thing got stolen. And the police are actively working with the thieves to cover the entire thing up. But the craziest part is that the collector doesn't even know that his collection's been stolen. Yeah, the collector's son, Brian, well, he reached out to me because he has no clue how to break this news to his dad.
So that's the surface level analysis here. It becomes like a full-blown fucking noir film, though. It gets so deep. But fundamentally, a individual who has spent years and tons of money accumulating an extremely valuable Lego collection worth up to $200,000 of value has had it stolen from him, unbeknown to him, and unfortunately law enforcement has repeatedly shown that they have no interest in investigating this case or
Is this like a
helping in any
civil
way.
asset
They have
forfeiture
instead
type
been
of
far
thing?
more on the side of the dubious perpetrators. And this individual's son has reached out to this YouTuber Reckless Ben because he's just caught in between a rock and a hard cock at this point. Like, there's very few options left since going through the proper channels
Okay.
prior to this,
Care.
the gold standard when it comes to selling your Legos. So the fact that they are the corporation that's implicated in this actually was pretty surprising to me, because they're like the only company in this space that I'd heard of. And it turns out,
I
well,
actually don't care.
might not.
Sam Hyde with Stefan Molyneux. That's something. Stefan Molyneux really fell off the face of the earth, huh? But you know, PewDiePie's got a thing. But no, there's this short form video that I was just looking at my deal on Restream. Go away, Claude. Wherever that is, wherever my Restream page is. Hold on. Okay, no, that's the wrong page. But yeah, I was just looking at my Restream setup, and I've got an AI deal where it pulls out clips from my streams. Okay, yeah. Oh my goodness. No, yeah. But yeah, I have it pull out clips from my streams. And yeah, all of my streams are called chillin, because that is what King Cobra JFS called his streams. But yeah, I have this one. Are LLMs AGI or not? This is a good one. What do we got? AGI is the potential to recursively self-improve into a superintelligence. That, you know, the way a lot of these people think, I need a better camera, huh? AGI until it unlocks God mode for humanity. That's actually the test of it. That's how we will know we have general intelligence. But I'm like, no, this is clearly a general intelligence. It's, you know, we conflate 3 things. High viral potential due to its concise 47-second format on AGI. It doesn't strike me as concise at all. Pausing and dithering. You know, I need better delivery. These words need to come out like ticker tape. You know, I need to get better at sight reading my own thoughts, as it were. But yeah, this is an interesting feature that I think is like $5 a month on Restream.io, that all your streams, it'll cut them up into clips. So what if I hit publish on? Oh, hell yeah. No. Yeah, this is just me wrestling with deployment config stuff. Yeah, that's silly. Sycophancy is a training artifact, not a quirk. But yeah, RLHF, this is not going to be very interesting, I think. What an opening! It's like I'm not even trying to optimize my streams to be clippable into short form video. I'm just killing time, and this gets an 8.2 out of 10 virality score. His computers don't know what the hell they're doing. Let's publish both of these. What do you think? What are the oranges for? But yeah, we'll see if that gets us anywhere. Can I view insights? They're still processing. What if I wanted some more clips? What about, yeah, the one from last weekend where I watched Kino Casino? Okay. This one, though. Can you spot the AI? Let's decode those filters together. Sure, whatever. You know, I feel like, putting out short form video is going to attract a kind of viewer that I don't want, because they're just going to demand slop. I don't want to get audience captured into a slop merchant. That's so interesting, the way it, is, it does this editing where it shows my face and the thing I'm watching, and here it just shows Worski and PPP. But this is just a clip from Kino Casino. It's just clipping up Kino Casino and I'm working in the background. That's very funny. So yeah, this automated clipper leaves something to be desired. The way that it... Okay, so what do we got here? AGI is the potential to recursively self-improve into a superintelligence. That, the way a lot of these people think, it's not true AGI until it unlocks God mode for humanity. That's actually the test of it. That's how we will know we have general intelligence. But I'm like, no, this is clearly a general intelligence. It's, we conflate three things. Okay, yeah, this whole window. Here, they conflate three things. People who are sloppier thinkers than I conflate general intelligence, human level intelligence, and the potential to recursively self-improve. So if I made myself a little bigger here, then probably I wouldn't be so low resolution in the vertical video. How it stitches them together. Because my camera's plenty high definition. It's just maybe something about how it gets compressed. Recommendations are off. Yeah, they frickin' better be. Okay, and then that's on Twitter. And we've got... So let's see, what's this? I think this is this guy's actual face. And just the way the light and shadow rest on his skin, looks like the way a face looks under indoor lights like you've seen a million times. But then, okay, any anatomists in the audience want to explain to me what is going on here? This is a simulacrum of human anatomy, right? This is... Right. The shadows are not bad, but notice the relative texturelessness of the skin. Right, and then, I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot more detail here. I think this is this guy's actual face, and like, just... Truly, I've got no love for the fakeness. Gen Alpha can't read anything. Gen Alpha is failing. Terrible doom and gloom stuff. Not that he's not making good points, but it's like, what can you do? Yeah, let's publish this one too. Doesn't take so much effort. We're living in the future. Oh yeah, the AI Feezer face. Doesn't know how to spell Feezer. Oh, and this one's fun too, playing around with the game of life. Yeah, I wonder, does Rumble just not have affordances to publish short-form video from a third-party service like this? Because Rumble must support short-form vertical video. Otherwise, they're just going against the grain of their whole media ecosystem. OnlyFans, I don't know. I don't know. That has no kind of hook at all. This AI makes some baffling editing choices, honestly. Or is there, like, you know, some sort of protocol? I'm wearing the same shirt. Make the AI cough every so often so that it sounds human. Because I don't like this. I don't think they should imitate humans at all. If anything, they should make the voices sound more robotic. You know, yeah, it should be a kind of denaturing, like how, you know, you have to put weird shit into alcohol to sell it as something other than a drink so that you don't have to pay taxes like it's a beverage. And there should be regulations that you can't make AI outputs sound like a human voice. It's fraud. It's at the very least deceptive, and I think it's fair to call it fraudulent. Yeah, I don't think this goes anywhere. Enhanced games. Track events were especially disappointing. U.S. sprinter Fred Curley, who publicly said he competed Clippers for stunt double, also claimed he won the women's. Okay. He still underperformed their own personal. Yeah. I don't know. I'll say so far I'm not super impressed with this AI editor thing. Okay, so I get 50 of these a month. And it resets in 2 weeks. Generate and publish clips while you're still live. Hell yeah, I want to... I gotta upgrade. Okay, we're doing this in real time. $59! Oh, no. That's not worth no $59 a month. Okay, but yeah, I want my clips 1 to 2 minutes. Yeah. 3 to 5. If I did 5 to 10 clips at 1 to 2 minutes each, yeah, because I mean this stream is going to be almost 2 hours. Language, sure, auto detect, I don't care. Visual style, sure. Yeah, that's interesting. That's what I'm seeing. Oh, that's interesting. So I have it as bubble. Sure. I don't know what any of this means. You know, I should have an AI manage all this stuff for me. But yeah, I don't know. It took me an hour and a half to respond to that half-hour Gerbert Johnson video. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else I particularly want to do on this stream right now. But yeah, I'll try and have some fun clips out from this once I see them.